So I've been thinking about doing this video for some time. Uh, it's a comparison, not a review. It's just a comparison. It's some information I wanted to provide anyone that's thinking between these two units. I wish I was able to find out this information years ago, but maybe it exists now. Don't know. Haven't looked. But anyway, so you got the Trail Tech Voyager Pro on the left. You got the Garmin Montana on the right. I believe it's the 680. Um, the displays are exactly the same resolution, and they're a 4-inch diagonal. The overall dimensions, the Trail Tech is slightly, I guess if you want to call it, wider. The overall footprint between the two, you really don't notice a difference. One of the benefits of the Garmin over the Trail Tech is the Garmin, you can have the display either in landscape or portrait. The Trail Tech is set up for 100% landscape. The Garmin, with the exception of the power button, is 100% touchscreen. The Trail Tech is the same thing except for the button. The power button can be 100% touchscreen, but it also, if you notice on the left and right side, you do have some navigation buttons. So if you're in motocross gloves or riding gloves or just cold and whatever, have winter gloves on, it does make it a lot nicer for navigating. A little bit slower, but at least you have the option. With the Garmin, a lot of times you have to take a glove off, or sometimes just getting the tip of the glove, say for your pinky, wet or moist, and then touching it sometimes will activate it. So it just depends. Regarding and I'm going to be jumping around a little bit because I'm just trying to do this in one shot. There's no checklist. I'm just babbling out of my mind here. Daylight screen readability, hands down, Trail Tech is far superior to be able to see in direct light than the Garmin. The Garmin, you have to catch the angle just right, and then if the sun is in the wrong angle, it's not impossible to see, but you have to kind of stare at it until your eyes are able to start, I don't want to say adjusting. It just takes longer to process what it is you're seeing because the contrast is subtle, so it's harder to pick out the details. Eventually you'll be able to, but your eyes are off the terrain too long. Trail Tech, no matter where the sun's at, most of the time there's never an issue with seeing it. Let's talk about loading. Well, let's talk about battery real fast. This one has an internal battery. You can't take it out. The only way to charge it is pretty much to have it on whatever thing you mounted. I bought a wall power adapter for it, and I've left it in the base station, so it was getting the power. It never charged, so I don't know why it didn't, but it just doesn't. So typically these will charge only when the bike's running and you have it powered up to whatever source the vehicle is. If you have a battery, it will drain it. This one has a removable battery pack, or you can go for AA's, either rechargeable or normal. You just tell it what batteries you have in there. It lasts, it claims 8 hours, but it actually will go longer if you're not aggressive with the backlight. This one, the Trail Tech, you're lucky if you get an hour use out of it. More if you have the backlight on, you're probably sitting more like about 30 minutes before the battery's dead. When I'm off-roading, both of these I leave full-time backlight on because it adds tremendous screen visibility, in other words, readability, so you can see it in the sunlight. Makes it a lot nicer. They both have, you can see on the bottom of this, there's the adapter where it goes into the base, or the pins. They're just same thing on the Garmin. The Garmin has a mount with some multiple inputs on it. I only ever used it for the power. The Trail Tech has multiple inputs on it as well. There's a power, there's a magnet wheel speed sensor pickup if you don't want to use GPS speed. There's a temperature input, and there's an ignition input, so you can do RPM. Do not believe this one has that For this one has an SD card, one of the micro SD cards type, the type that you'd put in your cell phone. Underneath this cover, you got to pull all the batteries, you got to slide a little metal tab thing, and then you pop it out. So it's one of those things, once it's installed, you're not going to really take it in and out that much. The Trail Tech, I left a little cover. It's right there on the side. So what that does is I use Google Earth to go ahead and find, if I'm going to a new location and I want to see all my options for routes, I'll go to Google Earth and create track segments. I'll measure each one of those segments and then I'll calculate my total distance, because for my dual sport I have about 160 mile safe range, and for the quads, for both the wife and my quad, we have a safe range of about 140 miles before we'd have to gas up. So we've got some considerable distance we can go without needing gas. So I'll measure all the segments and I'll calculate the route and figure out, gas and time, and have options if we're running a little bit late, or if, wife gets tired, or if one of us starts getting, I don't want to say an injury or blisters and we just need to get it back. I'll have alternate routes to get us back quicker, shorter time. What's nice on the Trail Tech is you just pop the SD card out, you put it in an adapter in the computer, you upload the file into the card, you shove the card back in the GPS unit, and then you just load the data. This one, you could kind of do it the same way, but typically what you'll do is plug in the USB adapter to this one and go through Garmin Basecamp. It'll read it, and then you just put the files in there. The big difference between the two when you get to the file structure is, let's say if you load up, let's say you have 10 riding locations that you don't have memorized, and there's multiple routes you can take. So you got 10 different riding locations. Let's say it's 10 different states. And then same thing here. And let's say within that, those 10 different locations, let's say there's 100 route segments. So on this one, you would have to have all 1,000 routes loaded, and you'd have to name them by the location and by the segment number, and then go through, and for each location that would be 100 segments or 100 tracks, you'd have to manually go down each one and turn it on so it's displayed. It's the only way to do it. You can't even do it through the software Basecamp. This one, all you do is go, let's say one of the locations is Northern California. You just go to the folder that's labeled Northern California. You tell it to upload the information from that, and all 100 segments will be uploaded immediately and active. And so going from location to location to location, Trail Tech, by far, hands down, superior. It's really nice for dual sport rides. It's really nice for adventure riding, or if you're going out and seeking specific trails. It's not random riding that you would typically do on, say, a desert style ride where you're just going to kind of maybe find your way. But for planned ones, you really can't. This is just the way to go. On the downside, what the Garmin does, it allows you to have each segment a different color. So what I would do is, if I was out riding a complex trail system, and like in Utah, southern Utah, they have the Paiute Trail System. It's probably about 3,000 miles of trails, and you've got a multitude of options. So some of them would be hard segments, some of them would be shortcuts, some of them would have more scenic than others. What you can do is you can do like your generic track that you're going to primary track is black. If it's a hard or an aggressive alternate route, you could do it in red. If it's a shortcut to save time or smoother, you can do it in green. So you can color code so you understand the different trail segments. This one, it's all kind of one color. You can do a different color between stored versus user, but it's for the whole batch. It's for that whole file. So you really don't. Now I'm getting ready to update the firmware on this one to I think revision 1.4. It may give you that option. I don't know. Under the 1.3 or the 1.2, whatever, it did not. And so hasn't been a huge issue. It is a slight issue when you're doing some more complex adventure riding. What else I need to talk about? What's nice with this unit, it's got multiple displays. You can think of it as it will give you an instrumentation dash, just like a street bike would have. So you can have your RPM bar, you can have your temperature for your ambient temperature, so outside temp, you can have the actual temperature feed. So you can have RPM, outside temp, engine temp. You can have the distance you've ridden, or you can have any, you can define the variables on it. This one gives you your GPS trip information that you can control and display, but it doesn't give you your temperature, it doesn't give you your RPM, doesn't give you any of this stuff. So this one, if you never rode on the street, would work fine. This one, if you're doing a dual sport or something, you have street legalized, definitely better for when you're on your street segments. This one is far superior for generating navigation routes for roads, paved roads, because you can use this one in a car. In fact, I have. Works good for if you're just going to a new state and you just want to do your routes. This one will show roads, but you can't calculate from an address to address. The Garmin allows you to. So what else did I want to talk about? Oh, real fast. This is not part of the unit. It's a foam thing that I put on the top of it, so the clutch cable and or brake cable stuff doesn't sit there and rattle off of it. This one you can buy the screen protectors for. It's installed. This one, at least a year ago, you could not buy them. I just went ahead and bought a tablet screen protector and then did a template and then just cut and made one myself. It's been working pretty good. So let me go ahead and let me look over some notes real fast and then I'll get back into the video. So doing a quick review of the notes, they both take the GPX extension files for your track files. So Google Earth uses KML or KMX, I don't remember. Anyway, if you do a KML, if you save it as, if you find it on Google Earth, create a track file, save it as a KML on your desktop, you can import that into Garmin Basecamp, which is excellent software for modifying and breaking up track segments. Use Google Earth so you can see the satellite imagery where you want to go. Then the file would be saved as a GPX. You can put the GPX files in this one or you can put it in this one. So I use the Garmin Basecamp to control the segment files for this, which makes it really nice. The other huge benefit of this one over the Garmin is this thing has a thing called the buddy tracker. What that does is underneath on this other side, it's not underneath this, I apologize, it's actually on the mount. On the top side of the mount, underneath it, there's two connections there for like a coaxial cable, like you'd see for your comm antennas. One of them is for an external USB antenna, an external GPS antenna. So if you have it mounted where you're not getting a good signal strength, you can do that. I have this one mounted in the cockpit of a Can-Am X3 with an aluminum roof and never had a problem with it. It stays connected to the satellites. So does this one. The other thing this one has is an antenna input for, they call it the buddy tracker system. And so if you create one of these units, creates the host network, and then all the friends can be invited and accepted into that network. So if you have another rider or several other riders, as long as they're within the range of the antenna, you can see an icon of where they're at on your display. So what makes this really nice is when the wife and I go out, she gets extremely nervous about me leaving her behind or her getting lost. So she can see where I'm at and I can see where she's at, and quite honestly I can see if she's still moving or if she's stopped, so I can quickly tell if I need to go back. Now granted, there is some limitations on the range, but the range is, I don't know if anyone's used the Senna units, the intercom ones. The range on this just blows that away as far as the connection. So line of sight, I want to say it's at probably, I don't know, maybe as much as a half a mile to a mile. I don't really know for sure because I never get that far in front of the wife. But the other thing that it will do is if you have a pack of riders and they're all distanced equally, the last rider in the chain will still be displayed on the first rider's display because the information will be daisy chained through the other units. So it's kind of like a trunk system where it passes the information along. The other thing you can do with this is you can use the Bluetooth and sync to it, and then use it as an intercom. As long as you have the buddy trackers locked in, you can use it as an intercom and talk to one another. So it works out pretty good, but the buddy tracker system's awesome. Of course, the Garmin has nothing like that. I think that's about it for a quick talk of the units. Let me go ahead and kind of show you what these look like on the side-by-side motorcycle and a quad. Okay, a quick update. Changed my mind. I figured I'd show you guys some of the displays. So here is the RPM one. This is a really nice one for when you're dual sporting on the street. Gives you your time, gives you mile per hour, gives you your tack, gives you your trip, so you can kind of have a clue on how far you've gone off a tank. And then it gives you, this one is set up for engine temp. You can also change the field if you want ambient temp, but ambient temp I'm not really concerned about. So you can cycle through the displays. Here's an instrument cluster. You can set these fields up. So here's the engine voltage, here's the trip, here's the elevation, here's engine temp, here's ambient temp, and then you got your mile per hour and time. Satellite information, a user-defined setup screen. I never really use that one. I'll look at it, and then your map, which makes it pretty nice. This is when we did a ride up in Idaho, Island Park. Went up there, so it was a pretty good ride. But that's what the display looks like, and then you can see what your range is. And what's nice on this one is it'll automatically kind of zoom around the display. So if the trail gets a little bit more complex on the routes you've uploaded, not what it's displaying, but the actual routes, the tracks, the segments, it'll kind of give you a little bit of zoom in. If it gets more simplified, it'll give you a little bit of zoom out. It doesn't do like full in or full out. It does a percentage, a small adjustment from where you set it at. So it makes it nice to be able to navigate a lot easier with it. Back to the main screen. And then if you go over here, this is your return button, and then this is your menu button. So this is where you can, oh, this is one thing I forgot about. Going back, so here's the return, is when you're on the map display. Sorry about jumping around, guys. There's a thing here, this locks the display, so if you slide your finger, the display doesn't lock. And then this, when you touch that, that tells it you want the display centered on your location. So the problem is every time you start this up is you have to go down here. You can see these little buttons. You hit that, takes you to your setup. You go into your options, and then options, it's a track up perspective. You always got to click on it to track up flat. So so right here it's, sorry, north up. So if you don't do track up, what ends up happening is it doesn't change the display to show you your direction. It doesn't, the display doesn't rotate as you go. It'll just keep north always as up. So it sucks when you do that. You want the direction that you're going to be displayed forward. Going back to the menu, you got, I'm not going to go through everything, but you can either use your finger to get down, or you can use these buttons. Typically when you got your gloves on, it's a button, but here's the maps, and you can just touch it, or you can hit an enter button, and then you can scroll down. Sorry, haven't used this for a while, so I think it's further down. Yeah, utilities. It's kind of strange that they did that. So under utilities, you can click on utilities. Your file browser, you click on file browser, then you go in your SD card, and then here's all the folders. So like for Duck Creek, Utah, if I just click on that and open that, here's the Duck Creek one, and there's probably 75 segment files in Duck Creek because it's such a, you have so many options there. So once I hit that, it'll load all that file into it, where on the Garmin, each individual segment, 75 segments, I'd have to go in there and say activate, show on map. I could pick its color. This is just going to show up. And a quick, easy to do the software update. In fact, that's what I'm going to do in a second. and then, which is pretty good that there's the satellites, and that's inside the garage through the roof and everything. Garmin typically would not connect in this situation. It would not have satellite coverage inside the garage. So, quick update. One other thing I thought of. Since there's a multitude of pages displays on this unit, you can actually deactivate or activate the ones you're interested in. So when you cycle and rotate through the different displays, if you only have two, then you're going to swap between the two. If you have three, of course, you can cycle either way through the three. So it makes it really nice to be able to not have displays on there that you're not interested in ever using. The Garmin, it has different displays within it, but once you're on the map display, you have to go back to the kind of icon display, and then you can have the icons set up as like quick access buttons, and then you can go to different displays that way. But every time you always have to back out of the display you're in, go to an icon page, touch the icon you want to see to get to it. So it's a little bit more cumbersome. This one is a lot easier. So quick update on that functionality. So this is a Yamaha 450 quad, the R. It's the motocross version. I've completely modified it as more of a desert racer, like a Baja racer. This would have been how the Garmin was mounted. Since the Garmin, as I mentioned before, allows you to do portrait or landscape, I had it mounted in the portrait mode. I had over here a switch that would control the power to it, and then the Garmin mount already automatically does the power conversion. So as long as you have a source, it'll go ahead and convert it, but you just put it in. That's how this one ran. So for the Trail Tech, let me swap them around real quick. The Trail Tech goes, since it's portrait only, mounts that way. What I've done is I've created a custom mount. There's a plate. I had to cut the top of the plastic Yamaha cover, but this is your ambient temperature sensor, and then there's 4 other wires that feed into this. One being power, one being your tach signal or ignition signal, one being a temperature probe, and the other one being a magnetic speed sensor. I don't use the magnetic speed sensor because I use the GPS for my speed, and quite honestly, since this isn't street legal, I really don't care what the speed is. You know, I don't need to monitor it. Interesting to know what you're doing, but I don't need to monitor it because I'm not like following a speed limit sign or anything like that. Since you do have the ignition feed, it does give you an RPM readout, which can be nice just when you're curious to know what type of RPMs you are turning. It'll also give you your engine hours, your run time, gives you all the normal, trip information. Makes it pretty good. This right here is a little custom mount thing that I made for the buddy tracker. And if I can do it one-handed here, I don't know why I'm screwing this up. I don't even remember how the hell I used it. So anyway, that's a good demo, isn't it? I think this rotates up, but I thought this rotates out. There we go. Okay. So I just wanted to make a system that would let the antenna get taller, but I wanted it, since the only time I use this is if I'm riding with a wife. So I haven't put that out for quite some time, but it gets it away from some of the metal, makes it a little bit nicer, extends the range a little bit more than if it was down low. So when I want to put it away, I just do that, and then it folds down. So it keeps it pretty clean. I just use some old scrap stuff. It works pretty good. But the one thing that I will say is the reason why I know this screen works so much better in the sun than the Garmin is when the Garmin was mounted here, it pretty much had the exact same angle as so they were both sitting at the same angle. And I had to, quite honestly, it was for the vast majority of the day, because, the sun, when you're still sitting 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock or even 10 o'clock to say 3 o'clock, depending on what time of year you are, sun's still pretty high in the sky. I'd have to move my head almost over top of it to see it. The Trail Tech, I can be sitting all the way back, have no problem. It doesn't really matter where I'm at. I get really good visibility on it all the time. This is the Trail Tech mounted on a KTM 500 EXC dual sport, so it's street legal. This unit makes it really nice because of the multi-displays that I mentioned earlier between the Garmin and the Trail Tech. I've mounted it, made a custom mount for it. I didn't go with the stuff you can buy. Wanted to get it as tucked down as good as possible, so it's as low as you're going to get it, I think. Where I've mounted it also, if you lean forward a little bit with your head while you're on the bike, you can see the KTM instrument cluster, the little display down there, so it makes it nice. You don't lose that functionality. This has, as I mentioned before, but we'll go over it real fast. It's got your ambient temperature. Then there's 4 other wires that come into it. One is for your ignition sense, so you get your RPM. Another is for temperature, which you can, which I do. I hook up to the radiator so I know what my engine temp's at. Got another one is power, and then the other one is speed. So since I'm not worried about speed using the magnet, the KTM one already has one in that display. I just use the GPS for the speed on this. This one's not permanent mounted, but it's permanently stays here. I don't yank it off because it's an integrated part of my display for riding this bikes, because it kind of gives you the functionality of an adventure bike, because like I said, you have so much information that you can use on the multitude of displays. Works really well. I didn't do, Trail Tech has a protective cover that goes around it. I didn't do that because I felt the probability of hitting it is relatively low, just because how low it is and it's protected by the bars. It'd have to be a pretty gnarly crash, and yeah, it could still be the only thing hit. But I'm just gonna take chances that it's most likely would not be the thing that gets trashed. But works pretty good. If you guys got any questions on this one, let me know. This is the Trail Tech mounted in a Can-Am X3 with the center console where you can have the adapter for a tablet. This is exactly how the Garmin Montana was sitting in there before. I changed out the holder to allow the Trail Tech. What's nice with the Trail Tech here is you can use a secondary temperature source just for the Trail Tech. So for your CVT temp, you can have it fed into here, and then you can also do a warning in here, set up when the light will come on. You'll get it like a red light over here on the side, so you can set it to tell you when your belt's getting too hot, which makes it pretty nice. But it works pretty good, just like the either the Garmin or the Trail Tech. Just feed in your power source. What's additional nice on this, another nice thing, is there's a ambient temperature sensor on the bottom, so you can actually get a feel for what temperature you're sitting in inside the cab. The screen is definitely much easier to see, as I stated before, than the Garmin in the sunlight. Most of the time this has got a roof on it, so at certain times of the day, especially around noonish, you'll get the sun coming down, and it'll hit almost not directly on the screen, it's catching it at an angle. But the Garmin, it was almost impossible to see at certain sunlight angles. Trail Tech never really had a problem. It works really well. And the other thing that's nice with the Trail Tech, now they both have the roads in them, so the Garmin's probably better than the Trail Tech for actually if you're gonna get a license plate on your X3. Just a quick little video for some of the other bikes I have. I don't use the Trail Tech on the bikes that I would not be doing super long complex rides on, where we're talking, upwards of 140 or 150 miles without stopping for gas. I don't need any of the highway display information. I really don't need any of the temperature, RPM. I don't really need any of that crap. So I just use this little Garmin. Display's adequate enough. Load up the files. Everything's displayed, and I have a USB adapter that's hardwired into the battery with a switch on the handlebars that controls it. I've done another video on that setup, but this is what I just use on my other bikes. On the quads, I do use the Trail Tech, as I mentioned before, and the reason being is because the quads are set up for about 140 mile range without having to do any gas. So, and the rides are I don't want to say they're not more complex, but they're more option based depending on what time we get to a certain location. Depends on if we're going to take a shortcut to get back before dark or whatever, or if the wife's getting tired. So, like I said, for the straight up simple track file stuff, I just use this mini Garmin. If you guys got any questions on that one, drop me a comment.